Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Megan Bond. I'm chair of the DFL Environmental Caucus, and just want to thank everyone for coming this evening. I know it's the NFC Championship right now, so I really appreciate those of you taking your time away from that. Fortunately, the Vikings aren't playing, so that you can be here. That's the one good thing about them not going any further, not winning their wild card round, right? Anyway, so tonight our group worked, our board and membership worked on 20, we got to 20 resolutions this year for precinct caucuses. And so tonight's presentation is going to be to share those. If you guys have any questions and answers, give brief explanations, kind of go over any questions you might have about what's going to happen at precinct caucuses. I can't tell you what's going to happen at yours exactly, but generally how we do this, I can give a, good overview. And there's a lot of people here that have been doing precinct caucuses much, much longer than I have that can definitely help. Being not a native Minnesotan. So, okay, so let's get going. Then I'm going to just get this going. And then also I have disabled the chat for everyone, just because it does get kind of distracting when we're trying to do presentations and everything. But if you do have any questions, you can still message the hosts and co-hosts, which are myself, our Vice Chair Matt Dahl, Chair Emeritus Vita Konitz, and our Communications Director Greg Layden. Okay. So if anyone has any questions, just go ahead and message us and we can pose them to the group. Okay, so welcome this evening. So here is the basic process that we used for coming up with this. Our Platform Resolutions Committee Chair, which was Matt Dahl again this year, asked the general membership of the DFL Environmental Caucus submit issues they wanted resolutions on. Some of them even submitted them in some resolution format. We then formed a committee, worked with some trusted partners, including Friends of the Boundary Waters, whose executive director, Chris Knopf, is here tonight. And then we ended up with 20 this year because we think that there are that many. There's probably way more than 20 things that are important, but this is what we could narrow it down to. So, and thank you to our committee members and Matt Dahl for chairing the committee again this year. Did a great job. Got our resolutions done in record time. I think just right, even the final ones just happened right after the new year, whereas a lot of groups are still putting them together. So I'm glad that we are out here ahead of the game, and just thank for everyone for all their expertise, for submitting any ideas, and that their writing and their fortitude, their commitment to doing this. It's a lot of work at the end of the day. So what can you do with these resolutions? I'll just kind of talk about this first before we get into the nitty gritty. With probably this week, and Greg, right, this week sometime, maybe, we will have, yes, the legislative session wins help inspire some of the resolutions we haven't necessarily covered before. Exactly, it's a great way of phrasing it. And then also some of the things that haven't been able to get through the legislature that we want to see passed also end up being priorities as well. And so you'll see some of those, like the EPR and things like that came up last session, and probably going to try to get something like that through this session. Anyway, so basically it's going to be up on our website probably later this week. And they will be the DFL forms that you would normally have at precinct caucuses that are on the DFL website, pre-filled out with the resolution and supporting points, and you can just print it up and take it with you. Or if you don't have a printer at home or anything like that, you can still just go on our website and bring your cell phone along to precinct caucuses, go on our website. There's a tab up on the top left that says 2024 resolutions. Click on it, you'll have all 20 listed there. Go ahead and just fill in the form at precinct caucuses when you get there. But then when you get there too, what would really, really help get these passed all the way through the action agenda. And on one of them, we're actually trying to amend the state platform, the ongoing platform, is run for delegate to your county convention, your OU, your SD, whatever it is for your convention there, because that's where you then take all the ones that passed at precinct caucuses, and they come out of your organizing unit or your Senate district, your county, whatever however you're organized wherever you are. I know it's significantly different up down the metro than it is up out in the greater Minnesota. So, and so for it to make it to the platform resolutions committee, which Phil Adam is one of the co-chairs of, he's here this evening. And Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, it needs to be passed out of 5 OUs in 2 CDs, if that's correct, in order to go to them. So the more we can get proposed through different organizing units spread throughout the state, the better we are having chances of it coming out of 5 OUs and 2 CDs. Okay. Then when you go to, your organizing unit convention, run for state delegate, run for your congressional district delegate. And the state convention is always a ton of fun. I don't know, I have a good time there. I'm that kind of political dork that does that. And that's where you're going to see the big, long ballot of them, and any things that got passed that made it on there, you have an option to do that. Like I said, we're trying to amend the ongoing platform for one of them, and the rest can potentially end up on an action agenda, a couple of which we've gotten very close on in the past and been contentious. And being in Duluth this year, we're going to be right at the heart of, right in one of the watersheds for Prove It First. Okay, I'm sorry. So how else can you help? You can donate to our caucus, because right now we are in the process of starting our endorsements for candidates, and our board and our endorsements committee has really decided that we want to go after some what we're calling environmental challengers. So people in key districts, both whether they're kind of purple districts or districts the DFL is trying to take back, or an incumbent that's in a tight race, either with for the endorsement or not. We would like to help them out monetarily. We've done a pretty good job with trying to get volunteers to door knock and phone bank, but at the same time, they need mailers. They need help getting ad time on the radio and TV and everything. And so we would really like to be able to help them out monetarily with their campaigns too. So any donations you can have would be there. You can go online and do that. Also, our treasurer, Lawrence Sandoval, he's on here, and he's been sending out letters, doing a great job helping us fundraise. So we would really like to hit about $10,000 to raise to donate to our candidates, because there are several key races where we would like to do even as much as we possibly can to get them over the edge.
Megan, can I stick in a comment?
Yes, please.
In answer to a question, we have 20 resolutions. You cannot walk into your caucus room and submit 20 resolutions. Okay. Well, you could try, because you might even have some other things to do. What I'm going to do is send 1/20th of our members a request to bring a specific resolution, and then another 1/20th a request to bring another resolution, and so on, so that we have distributed them, people, if they want to bring it, if they like it, to bring that to their caucus along with anything else you're doing, so that one resolution gets a fair hearing at whatever our membership is divided by 20 times the fraction of who people do it, caucuses. So that's how we're going to try to get that done.
Yes, because I mean, I mean, even myself as the chair of this caucus, if I walked in with 20, depending on what precinct, our precinct, the one I lived in previously, had 3 people. We showed up at the last one, and it was one of my good friends' dad and stepmom. I got as many of them passed as I wanted to, except for one. But at the same time, the precinct I live in now probably will have a little bit higher attendance. So I can't do that to people. So pick some and really kind of think strategically about which ones would you have more likelihood to get passed in your precinct and everything. And like you said, watch your emails or emails from Greg, because there's going to be other people that want to propose them too. But, bring in a couple is very good. All right, we'll start this off. And then I think this one goes to Janelle and Vita.
Thank you very much. I'm going to get us started, and Janelle's going to take the next one. I did want to mention also with these resolutions, you're probably going to precinct caucuses with some friends from your district. So maybe you bring 5 in and you get a friend to bring 5 in. I mean, that's what I intend to do down in my Senate district, just so that people don't think it's all me. right? Everybody's got their key issues that they care strongly about. So Janine's in my Senate district, so we'll work together on that and make sure we get a number of these in. All right, so the resolution I want to talk about is one that's very important to me. It's called Protecting Groundwater Quality. We are having issues here where, you know, we're trying to clean up nitrate contamination to reduce the amount of nitrates in our water. But all of these efforts have been primarily voluntary for farmers and people with septic systems, unless they sell their home. And the issue is it's going to take time. And this is very limited success. We're learning that nitrates at very low levels, 10 parts per million is the standard, but that's going to be lowered because 4 or 5 parts per million, or maybe even lower, is shown to cause cancer. And if you are on public drinking water, your city or your municipal well is testing their water regularly and making sure, hopefully, that it's clean. If you're on a private well, like Janelle and I are out here in the country, we're on our own. And there's no one testing our water. We have to make sure we have it done. And so what we're saying is we need free testing provided, especially in areas where there's high impacts, like the karst region down by Rochester, right, in southeastern Minnesota. The rock is fractured bedrock there, and when it rains, any of the contamination goes right down into their drinking water. And so it's a real issue. I mean, obviously, we have to change some of our farming practices to stop this, to mitigate it. But in the meantime, people are drinking contaminated water. And like there was an incident, it's not just nitrates, we have PFAS, I'm sure many have heard about in our water. Arsenic, where I live and in some parts of our state, there's naturally arsenic in the water. And this was an eye-opener to me, and I'm a science teacher. You know, I'm not giving my dog my tap water anymore because of the arsenic in it. We have to run ours through a filter. So the bottom line is we need our state, our Department of Health. We need testing done through the county or whatever level to see if our wells are impacted. And then we need help getting treatment systems, whatever that might be. It might be just installing a system on your home tap water so that it's safe. But everyone deserves clean, healthy water. So we'd really like to see this resolution passed.
And there's the
think,
supporting, those
Yep.
were the supporting points, yes, okay. Okay, Janelle.
Hi, Janelle Kuzna. So the next resolution is protect groundwater quantity. I live in Elko, New Market, and this is an issue that's dear to my heart. Currently, we do not have great oversight or laws that look at management of our groundwater here in Minnesota. And we are not taking a regional approach to our groundwater. 70% of all Minnesota's drinking water is coming from our aquifers, and we are not adequately looking at how that water is being used. Farming practices, commercial use, municipalities, private wells. Currently, the DNR is responsible for appropriation permits. However, when a city submits for an appropriation permit here in Minnesota, we do not look at, they do not look at what the neighboring city is doing, what the neighboring farmer is doing. And if you look at the records with the DNR, you will note that several people are over their appropriations permits, what they're allowed to be taking. So really, our groundwater laws are outdated, and we need to take a regional approach to our groundwater laws and have better oversight of our aquifers to ensure that our aquifers are able to recharge and will be available to us in the future. And I think this is a huge issue, and I hope we can get this resolution passed and we can get some traction.
Thank you. Libby.
Yeah, thanks. Another important one here. So this one is no new fossil fuels. And, as a country, we've made progress with clean energy. We have clean energy production for our electric power sector. For the first time, it's overtaken coal, and that's due to growth in wind and solar. But natural gas continues to be our largest power source, and the US is now the world's largest exporter of liquid natural gas, with basically a staggering rise of exports of these fuels. So even as we try to position ourselves as a global climate leader, that puts us in this kind of awkward position of do as we say, not as we do. So this resolution is incredibly important. It would mandate the calculation of climate impacts, including the external and social costs of carbon for all new infrastructure projects. It would deny funding or permits for high impact projects and incentivize those with no significant carbon footprint, and of course support the transition from existing fossil fuel based infrastructure as quickly as possible. It would point out that carbon capture and storage, geoengineering, carbon offsets, those are wishful thinking and not alternatives to reducing emissions. We know the 1.5 degree Celsius warming goal is basically already out of reach, and any hope for keeping warming under 2 degrees is fading fast. So putting a price on carbon will drive the economy to cleaner renewable sources, and economists agree it's the most effective way to reduce emissions while protecting low and middle income families. So we hope this resolution will pass.
Thank you, Libby. Greg.
Hi, Greg Layden here. Yeah, the Green New Deal resolution to declare a climate emergency and support a Green New Deal to provide a just energy future in which all Minnesotans can recap the health and economic benefits of efficiency programs, renewable electricity, and energy jobs, mandate the use of union labor in development of new energy infrastructure. Go to the next slide. Basically, major changes in technology always make opportunities for wealth development and tend to exploit somebody new. And the Green New Deal proposes aggressively attacking climate change, but while simultaneously shaping what we do when we make that change to enhance the economies and conditions of life for everybody equitably. Will the energy transition that we all want and work for make the rich richer and the poor poorer? Next slide. The Green New Deal says, not this time, please. And I'll just point out, this is the same resolutions we've used in the past, except we've added specifically a reference to union jobs. And that's our Green New Deal resolution.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, prove it first. We made a little tweak to our language this week, and I'm just going to read this, and then Chris, you can go ahead and go it off from there. Basically, there's been some issues getting a hearing on this even. So support the Minnesota legislature holding a hearing on the proposed Prove It First legislation, and support the governor directing the DNR to withhold all applied for permits for copper nickel sulfide mines in Minnesota until it can first be proven that such mines can be operated and safely in our water-rich environment and not violate state, federal, or tribal water qualities. So we took in some of the court wins as well as legislation. So Chris, if you want to take a couple minutes.
Yes, good evening, and thank you, everyone. Well, 2 years ago, we came very, very close to passing the Prove It First resolution, but came 2 percentage points short of that. And so this is not the same as taconite iron mining. Copper nickel sulfide mining has never been done in Minnesota. So this is a new type of mining coming to Minnesota. And among the many toxic effects of this is that it produces sulfuric acid, battery acid. And so that is the existential threat to our water quality. Once that genie is out of the bottle, so to speak, it cannot be put in. And so now with the 3 mines that are being proposed, the Glencore Polymet mine, the Antofagasta Twin Metals mine, and the Rio Tinto Talon mine, we have the dubious distinction of having the boundary waters, Lake Superior, and the Mississippi watersheds at risk here. So we are the land of 10,000 lakes and sky blue water. Water is our natural heritage, and sulfide mining threatens that heritage. And so those childlike, very simple questions are often the most profound. And so that question is, if they can't point to one example where sulfide mining has not polluted, then why would we do it here in Minnesota? And so that's the Prove It First resolution. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for the work you've done over the years as well. We're very close, and we'll put it over the top this year. So.
Yes, thank you, Chris, for all the leadership you've done on Prove It First over the past decade-ish. We're heading there. Matthew, are you
That's
available?
me. Thanks, Megan. Yeah, so clean transportation. This is pretty similar to a resolution we've done last year. We want to support development of sustainable transportation in all areas of the state. Well, we changed around the wording a little bit because we wanted to reflect kind of the order of the hierarchy of good forms of transportation in terms of carbon and environmental health. So pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, mass transit, streetcars, commuter rail, etc., buses, reduction of air travel emissions, and charging stations for electric vehicles, all great things that will help us to decarbonize transportation, which is our largest source of climate emissions in the state. So we've got some supporting points and ideas here. I will say this last legislative session was really great for clean transportation. We got a new sales tax in the metro for transit, and since most of the state's vehicle miles are generated in the metro, that's going to help to reduce those miles and then reduce carbon emissions. But there was also funding for public transit throughout the state, bike walk, and the train from the Twin Cities to Duluth. So lots of great options are rolling along here, and we'd like to see those keep ramping up. So that's it for that one.
Thank you.
And then, yep, that's also mine. Environmental justice. So this covers supporting protections and funding for environmental justice communities statewide from pollution, disproportionate environmental harms, and ensure that those communities' voices are fully included in the decisions that impact them. So an environmental justice community, as defined by the MPCA, is a community that's predominantly lower income or communities of color and tribal nations. These communities are often used as sacrifice zones for pollution. So they'll cite polluting industries there or highways, what have you. It could be mines in tribal areas, especially. And that's kind of a legacy that we have here in the state of where we have really large racial disparities, and the environment is a huge part of that. So we want to rectify that. There were some steps taken at the legislature this past session to introduce new protections for environmental justice communities. I think the cumulative impacts law is a big one. That only covers the metro, Duluth and Rochester, and tribal nations that opt in can take advantage of that law. But basically it allows for a new kind of veto point for proposals that might cause environmental harm via air pollution in vulnerable communities. So I'd like to see more steps building on that. That's just one first step, but we need to do a lot more to help rectify those longstanding racial and economic disparities in whether the air and water that you rely on is clean or not. So that's the hope with this resolution.
Thank you. Pharmaceutical pollution. Catherine Zimmer helped on this work, did a lot of work on this one. She's here, wants to speak about it.
There we go. Hi, good evening, everybody. So this pharmaceutical pollution, if you haven't heard about it, it's been around for quite a while. It's been identified as an issue, particularly in the effluent from wastewater treatment plants. And then in a few rare cases, there's actually been some of these chemicals in finished drinking water. So what we would like to see is to support extended producer responsibility for the management of waste pharmaceuticals and waste pharmaceuticals and packaging to protect water quality for wildlife and human health. Next slide, please. So I think it goes without saying that both humans and wildlife need fresh, clean water for drinking, life, and recreation. And pharmaceutical residues have been found in surface waters. The sources include manufacturing, residential disposal, healthcare disposal, and excretion. And actually, scientifically vetted studies indicate that anywhere from 0.5% to greater than 70% of pharmaceuticals administered, in other words, taken by a person primarily, but also probably your pets or whatever, are excreted into wastewater systems. Pharmaceutical waste packaging contributes to the problem. For example, many of you have probably gone to the pharmacy to pick up your medication and want to reuse your same bottle, and they will not let you. There's really not technically any laws against that. So that would be just a really nice first step if we could reuse our same medication bottle and go for refills. And just to give an idea of the magnitude of the problem of waste pharmaceuticals that have been collected and I guess mostly just weighed by the Drug Enforcement Administration. In 2010, they started holding twice a year collections for pharmaceuticals. And since then, almost 9,000 tons, not pounds, not tons, and you're talking little pills primarily, have been collected by the Drug Enforcement Administration. And this waste is primarily medications. They ask that you pour the pills into the collection container and then dispose of the container. So it's mostly the medication that's in that waste. It's not containers, packaging, etc. And the disposal then ultimately is paid by taxpayers.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay. So on this one, I think we were going to Anne or Janelle. Did you want to speak about this one?
Sure, I'll go. Plastic. So reduce plastic waste. Enact extended producer responsibility for plastic packaging, requiring producers to collect 70% of the plastic packaging they generate within 5 years and reduce the plastic packaging they produce by 50% within 10 years, and prohibit all toxic substance and materials in plastic packaging. Next slide, please. So we all know plastic pollution continues to be a huge environmental concern worldwide, and change is needed at every level. The EPA actually defines containers and packaging as products that are assumed to be discarded the same year the products are purchased and are used to wrap or protect goods, including foods and beverages, so single-use plastics. Extended producer responsibility is really a policy approach that assigns producers greater responsibility for the end of life management of products they introduce to the market and encourage innovations in product design. So really with this resolution, we would make the producers more responsible for the products that they're putting out into the environment. And also I think it creates, EPR can encourage corporations to introduce new initiatives and come up with great ideas to help us with our plastic pollution problem. And really prohibiting the toxic substances is common sense. A lot of these plastic packaging is touching our food and our water. We've all read about nanoplastics, etc. And they're going into our bodies. So most plastic is derived from fossil fuels, and there are several toxic substances. With this resolution, we hope to reduce some of the impact that plastic is having on our environment.
Thank you, Janelle. Okay, so this one's on me. So what we have this year is to support Indigenous tribes' right to self-government. Including the generation of revenue to serve their people and the protection of natural resources they depend on. So in this matter, some of the supporting points you can see here. I worked heavily on Line 3 criminal defense with the water protectors, and a lot of these treaty rights came into play as they were going through, as the pipeline was coming down. So we already took this land from the original settlers on here. I mean, we're referencing here the Dakota, Anishinaabe, and Ho-Chunk peoples. There's the Laurel Indians even before that. And we violated treaties in the midst of doing this. And so we just really want to recognize that, especially when it comes to environmental aspects, that we need to protect their sovereignty and respect their sovereignty, and not make these decisions in ways that we're not taking their point of view, their sovereignty into respect. So if anyone wants to talk more about this on the side, I'd be happy to do that, but just on that one. Oh, this one's also me. So here's one where we're going to try to do something really fun and amend the ongoing platform. This is, so when you fill out your or bring in your sheet, it's going to be very, very important on it that you say amend the ongoing platform to do this, because this resolution, I think we put it in some form about 2018, and it passed in 2018 in a different format, but then in 2020 and 2022 in this format. And we figured if there's been 3 conventions that have gone by where this has passed with no problem, there's no reason that something like this should not be on the ongoing platform. So oppose any effort to circumvent or weaken state or federal environmental laws or protections involving administrative procedures and permitting. Don't need to make it easier for people to pollute. Basically is the idea behind it. We saw just hundreds of them removed by the Trump administration. There, if you can find it, still up on their website, but New York Times did a thing about like the 140 whatever that were revoked by Trump, and just all the impacts they had in different categories and in their effects and things like that. So we basically have to put those all back together now. And so we see corporate-backed efforts driven by members of both parties. It's not just, I don't want to say that the Democrats are innocent in this, because they're not. There are several that will do this. And we just cannot afford the rollbacks of these environmental protections or inadequate enforcement of our environmental protections. And I think that this one's pretty universally acceptable. So make sure that when you get this short, put on there, amend the ongoing platform, because we want to get this more than just passed on the action agenda. Okay, this is Libby, I believe.
Oh, thanks, Megan. And yes, oppose rollbacks. Holy moly. Yeah, and this resolution supports what we see as just common sense measures to protect and preserve our waters and our habitats and wildlife on public lands from off-road vehicle impacts. So it recognizes the need for things like adequate buffer zones between trails and waters, signage, meaning no sign, no access, and environmental assessments for trail construction. Right now, just so you're aware, a multi-million-dollar expansion of off-road vehicle trails is in progress, and that includes 3 DNR master plans for ATVs, off-road vehicles, and off-highway motorcycles. And then these trails would be in addition to what is almost 4,000 miles of currently known off-road vehicle trails in the state. And there's really been no true cost analysis that includes the cost of things like road maintenance, emergency services, enforcement, environmental damage, and impacts to other forms of recreation. And a real concern is that these ORVs introduce and distribute invasive species through seed dispersal. The spread of terrestrial invasive species is a huge monetary burden on the state and on our ecosystems. Sorry. And in case you're wondering, the DNR's 2008 trail planning design and development guidelines, they're there, but they're voluntary, they're unenforceable, and also state that trails should not be modified to reduce ecological impact if it would diminish the value to the targeted user. So just a few examples of where these guidelines fail would be, the guidelines say that avoiding sensitive ecological systems and wetlands is the best protection strategy. But the recently approved phase 2 of the ATV Prospector Loop crosses multiple wetlands and designated high biodiversity areas. The DNR internal environmental review for the border-to-border route states several trout streams would be crossed, but local citizens found that 27 trout streams would be crossed 61 times in Lake County alone. And then finally, the DNR doesn't assess cumulative impacts. So there's no data and threshold measurements for how much is too much for our state waters and lands and life. There's no assessment for fragmentation of habitat, which is incredibly important, as we know. And there's no published justifications for why additional trails are needed beyond the existing inventory.
Thank you, Libby. Okay, next one we have Verlin. I believe this
Yep.
was one you worked on.
Thanks. The United Nations International Panel on Climate Change estimates that for full contribution of the land use sector to the temperature goals of the Paris agreements to be achieved, at least 350 million hectares of degraded land must be brought under restoration by 2030. Basically, 30% of the greenhouse gas reduction must come from land use, and so they call this the 30 by 30 initiative. The efforts includes improved land management of forest, wetlands, grassland biomes, and improved resilience of productivity of farmland. The DFL supports accelerated action by the state of Minnesota to achieve a fair share of this global target and to put Minnesota on track to achieve its greenhouse gas emissions goals. The efforts to restore and preserve important natural lands and critical wildlife habitat include, but not limited to, expanding forest lands in both public and private lands, protecting peatlands in a manner that maximizes this carbon sequestration of these critical carbon sinks, buffering surface waters via DNR easements, CRP leases, and permanent protections, restoring meaningful acres of Minnesota's native tallgrass prairie, and expanding parks and green space in our cities and towns to improve livability and combat the effects of the heat island. So based on that, this is the resolution that we'd like to put forward.
Thank you, Verlin. Larry.
Yeah, the idea of a precautionary principle would require newly developed substances to be proved safe before widespread manufacture and use and support the banning of toxic and carcinogenic substances such as PFAS in consumer goods. You'd think this would be the rule, but it really isn't yet, but it certainly is a principle that's used widely in Europe. Okay, our current system allows corporations to introduce chemicals without the burden of proving they're safe first. It is on the regulators to have to prove that the chemicals are harmful. Minnesota and U.S. should introduce the precautionary principle in regulating new chemicals, ensuring that harm is prevented beforehand rather than afterward. It would require corporations to prove their new substances are safe prior to approval for widespread use. And finally, research is needed to better understand sources of trace contaminants like PFAS and pharmaceuticals so they can be effectively controlled before they enter surface and groundwater.
Thank you very much. Matt.
Me again. So some of you may know that up until several years ago, the MPCA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, had a board that oversaw its decisions, that was appointed by the governor of basically citizens from around the state, representing some geographical diversity to provide a little oversight. And if the MPCA made a decision that they disagreed with, they could order more studies or environmental review. They very seldomly did that, but I think in 2015, I believe it was, the board overturned an MPCA decision and ordered a more environmental review for a large dairy project. And the Republican legislature didn't like that, so they snuck in a policy kind of at the very end of session, or I think even in the special session, that got rid of that. The citizens board basically forced Governor Dayton's hand on that. So we'd like to bring it back. There's a number of organizations that worked on this last session, and it was just narrowly defeated in the House by a few legislators on our side of the aisle, unfortunately. But the idea is that it would maintain that geographic diversity and also add in some representatives from tribal communities, labor, communities of color, and other important groups in the state. And so instead of just having one, basically instead of just having one PCA commissioner appointed by the governor, we'd have the PCA commissioner and then a bunch of people to help oversee the agency so that it's making decisions with an eye towards what the people of Minnesota need. It wouldn't be a cure-all for everything, but I think it would go a long way towards maybe approving less projects that shouldn't be approved, like sulfide mining, oil pipelines, mega dairies, etc. So hope to see that brought back into the legislature and passed into law.
Thanks, Matt. Vita.
Yes, thank you. So this is not a new resolution, but we're bringing it back because we now have our trifecta. And Julie Blaha pretty much told us, you know, get us a Senate that's DFL controlled, and let's do this. So I think we're going to hold our feet to the fire and our legislators. But what we would like is to support the divestment from fossil fuel holdings by the Minnesota State Board of Investment to protect the pensions of Minnesota civil servants and educators from financial risk and to help move our economy to clean energy sources. This is just one of many tools in our toolbox, but it's a very important one. It sends a very strong signal to markets to say that, you know, it's a political statement, right? That we do not support this. And as a teacher ready to retire, I definitely want this for my funds. So besides that obvious moral argument that we have that, you know, we don't want to invest in things that are polluting and contaminating our climate and bringing about, you know, species extinction, it is also just a bad investment right now. If you look at the market, these holdings are going to become stranded assets. There more and more is litigation against our Exxon and our other polluters, right? Our other fossil fuel organizations as city, county, state governments have to pay for the destruction from climate-related events. We're also seeing, of course, cap and trade and carbon fees being instituted, which makes that formula where investing in fossil fuels just doesn't make sense. The renewables are already cheaper and they're just going to keep coming down. So there are many institutions, many colleges, universities, and even states like New York State that have divested, just as we did when we divested during apartheid, right, in South Africa. There's a very strong moral argument to do this. And again, it makes financial sense. So please help us push this resolution and get it done.
Thank you, Vita. And I pay into MSRs myself. And so this is something I would really be pushing for. And then when I was in private practice and set up my SIMP IRA, I made sure that the person we set this up with also, you know, got to practice what you preach. Matt.
Back to me. So sustainable agriculture, this is, I think, almost word for word what we did last time around, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Agriculture is our, I think, second largest source of carbon emissions in Minnesota at this point. It's a big source of our water pollution, and our state has like the fifth largest agricultural economy. So it's a big issue, and we need to address the fact that it can be a tool for us to make the climate environment better rather than making it worse. So we've got a lot of different tools in the toolbox. We've got a lot of different Minnesota groups that are working on trying to make our farming more sustainable so that we can build soil health, protect pollinators, and protect family farmers all at the same time, which is totally possible. There's great programs coming out of the University of Minnesota and other places that can help us get there. So really want to keep supporting that, supporting both our farmers and land and water that we all depend on.
Thank you, Matt. Catherine.
Yeah, well, so this is similar to last year's, but we had some success on getting the lead out of drinking water sources and getting some testing for folks. So we have got a little bit of history on getting the lead out. So this resolution is continuing to move away from lead, and particularly the exposures associated with lead ammunition and fishing tackle. So next slide, please. And there. Oh, okay. Good. Thank you, whoever fixed this. So
You're welcome.
the reality is there's no safe level of lead, particularly in children. Children are highly susceptible to the effects of lead because they have both a higher metabolism, they're growing, and so it's easier for their bodies to incorporate lead into places that it shouldn't be, and leading to all kinds of ill health effects, the most preeminent of them being mental health effects. Ironically, the Pollution Control Agency regulates lead in other entities, but the PCA does not regulate lead at shooting ranges. And so the spent ammunition of lead is left laying in the ground until the shooting range closes. So there's the potential for all this lead that's been shot out at shooting ranges to be leaching into groundwater and again affecting humans and wildlife at different levels of exposure. There's been an interesting literature search or literature review that shows that everybody pretty much at shooting ranges has lead in their blood, and that is kids, youth shooting range leagues. And even they bring that home, and some of their family members also become exposed to the lead that is on their clothing or whatever. So, and kids at shooting ranges are not tested for lead. So we really don't know to the extent that the problem exists, but they have likely been exposed and are carrying lead in their systems. Unfortunately, the DNR has failed to ban lead in ammo and fishing tackle. So this is why we might need to put this through the legislature and finally get her done. And I think all of us know that strong evidence indicates that lead ammunition and fishing tackle has resulted in harm and death to numerous wildlife species, including some of our most iconic symbols, the bald eagle, common loons, and swans. So this is, oh, and I want to mention too that the Ikes actually just passed a resolution to get the lead out this weekend. So we've got some hunters and fishers that are supporting this, and this is something that would be really awesome to get through.
Thanks, Catherine. It would very much be something, especially living up here where it's big hunting and fishing area. You know, I live in an area where that's what people do is they hunt and they fish, and we have a huge trap shooting team in our high school. And I don't think people realize what their kids are being exposed to by being on a trap shooting team, which is very popular at our high school. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, organic waste.
I guess that one's mine.
I think so.
Support Minnesota communities in developing source-separated organics. That means that your trash bin to increase the diversion of organic waste from landfills and to and toward productive uses and to conserve landfill space. So next, there's no, okay. Organic wastes are about a third of Minnesota's landfill mass, so diversion would increase the lifespan of landfills, reducing the need for new landfills, which are somewhat problematic to locate. Organic wastes have a lot of value. They can be converted to compost. They can be used as a feedstock for animal feeds after drying and sterilization. They can be used to produce methane fuel through anaerobic digestion and for other purposes. Right now, about 47 Minnesota cities have source-separated organic laws to various extents. And the idea would be to make this a statewide law, at least for larger towns and cities.
Thank you. Thanks, Larry. Anne, are you around?
I am on, and thank you. And this is the last resolution, so this one calls for this support of free electronics recycling in the state of Minnesota. And we want to do this for a number of reasons. There's a lot of precious metals, value in the materials, and when they're not recycled and handled properly, there's lots of problems with it. So specifically, the amount of value, there was a study within the last year or shortly before about the value of the e-waste stream being $3.2 billion per year, which is an incredible amount. When you overlay that on the fact that we're also confronting people wanting to mine more for precious metals, it's like, okay, it's not reasonable. So if we could develop a free collection system, that's the way we can get the diversion that we really need. And that the capture of 100% is estimated to be about 1,700 jobs in the state of Minnesota by capturing the metal and then using them for the clean energy transition. So the toxins that are in the e-waste, lead, mercury, barium, lithium, chromium, polychlorinated biphenyls, and brominated flame retardants are the worst of them all. So we really want to get those. And problem is that if it's not free at the disposal end, you don't get them all. And in rural Minnesota, what we know is that people, if they can't get rid of them in their garbage, they don't want to pay. It'll just show up in the ditches, which is exactly what we don't want. And then if people put them in the waste stream, not only do we have the description of the Rice County fire recently, when e-waste was the reason for this fire that was just obviously 30 feet deep and the size of a football field, and it took several weeks to put out. But in addition to landfill fire, actually even the bigger issue is that the fires and damage at recycling facilities all around Minnesota and across the nation, they're huge. They're really expensive. So there's literally no reason why we shouldn't have free collection. We need to get that in the waste stream. And the reason we didn't specify product stewardship as the support product stewardship for this is because there are two bills that are being promoted as a way to recover this. One of them, and the one that seems to have the most juice early on, actually isn't a product stewardship approach per se. It's actually a point of sale fee. So we just thought we would default to the free collection, and if people can figure out what's the best route at the legislative level, but we just need to be those to get them recycled for the consumer and businesses at no charge.
Thank you so much, Anne. And there are places, I think Catherine mentioned that I think Ramsey County does these for free, but up here, even if you wanted to take it to a place that like our transfer facility or town dump, you have to pay them to take it from you. So why people just let this stuff build up in their house? I'm sure I have a drawer full of old cell phones. I know I do. And it's like, what do I do with them? I don't want to throw them away. So places like that, especially in rural Minnesota, would be really nice to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so once again, just going to review what we said earlier. Coming in, if you go to our webpage, these are a little screenshot of it here. Our homepage up on the top left corner right here where my mouse is, you can see there's 2024 DFL EC resolutions. Currently they're there. Currently they're there just in the format that you saw of the resolution there, but we will have printable PDFs that you can take, that you can just download and take with you if you want to just do it that way. Or you can just go to the webpage as is right here on your cell phone. You just got to go to the drop down menu on the top and to where it says 2024 DFL EC resolutions. And this page will come up and you can have it on your cell phone and just write it in on the forms when you get in there as well. So February 27th is precinct caucuses. I think I just got a question in the chat, and I'll just be happy to kind of answer this. Precinct caucuses are going back to normal this year. This is pre-COVID precinct caucuses. So the way you did this in February of 2020, you're going to be doing it in this year. Or was it January? It doesn't matter. The way you did it in 2020 is the way you're going to do it this year. 2022 was just the exception to the rule with precinct caucuses. Having said that, some of them were still in person, but most of us had ones where we just emailed them in or dropped them off or things like that, and they were automatically passed. That's not going to be the case this year. You do have to go back to doing it your own way and propose it at your table or where group pod, wherever you guys get situated at, where your caucus is taking place with your precinct in your neighbors, and propose them as normal and get it passed through the group. And you have to use the form. So we're going back to the old fashioned way. It was nice to just email them in and it was considered automatically passed, but that's not the case this year. Again, and as Greg mentioned, and I live in a very rural community. And so sometimes the person that shows up to precinct, there's 2 or 3 of them. So yeah, you're the only one there. You could pass them all, right? Especially in the redder parts of our county where there's not a lot of Democrats because it's very, very rural, or there are, but they just don't come all the way into town just to go to precinct caucuses because it's a decent haul of a drive up here. So especially when the weather's uncertain in the middle of winter in rural northern Minnesota, where your highways don't have shoulders. So that's just how it is. But if you're in the metro where people actually show up and do participate a little bit more and propose resolutions, really kind of divvy down into like a couple that you really might want to think would want to be passed, because they need to get through 5 organizing units or Senate districts or county, whatever, out of 2 congressional districts. And like we said, we really want to push through that opposed rollbacks one because we're trying to get that on the ongoing platform. So that would be a heavy lift, and that one's short and sweet and simple and easy to get through. And as Greg said, just watch your emails because you're going to be getting kind of targeted emails to bring 1 or 2 in of these 20 to your precinct caucuses to try to get them passed so we can spread them out throughout the state as much as possible. And then what else can you do? I'm going to go do the ask again. And I think we already had a couple people donate already from this meeting. So thank you very, very much, those who did. But please donate to us. We don't charge membership dues, but what we would like to do is be able to give some money to our environmental challengers. And these would be people in key districts. We do great about sending people door knocking and phone banking, but they need money too to buy ad time, because that's just unfortunately what the world we live in. But we would really appreciate anybody do that so we can get our environmentally progressive legislators and congresspeople elected. We're looking at purple districts, incumbents facing close challengers, or really great upcoming environmentally progressive people running for the first candidates running for the first time. We'd like to really show them how much we love them and by heart and mind and body power. And that's it. That is our presentation for the evening. Does anybody have any questions?
Megan, I have a quick comment.
Yes, please, Vita.
I just put a link to a Google Doc in the chat that is basically an invitation to screen with us. So if you have a good candidate in your district who hasn't seen our stuff about endorsements yet, would you please share this with them? There's a link to a form for them to fill out, and then they'll get our screening options, directions. So we would love if you would help spread this around. Let them know we are currently taking applicants, and we have a committee of about 35 people that are ready to start doing these, looking these over and start doing some interviews. So thank you.
Endorsing conventions are right around the corner. Those start early March. I know my HD 3A endorsing convention is going to be March 10th. So coming up fast. Phil, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just wanted to say that last election cycle, everybody wound up submitting about 2,600 resolutions to the state platform committee. And I would say 500 to 600 of them were related to climate or the natural resources in the environment. There were 9 separate resolutions out of the 89 passed by the state convention that were related to either eliminating carbon or reducing carbon, and they alone were 10% of the resolutions. So yeah, we make a big impact in the platform.
That's great to hear. That's really, really impressive. So thank you for everyone who helps out with these, who shows up to precinct caucuses and proposes these, who, if that's over half.
Yeah. By the way, 78 separate organizing units passed resolutions on Prove It First last time.
Wow.
Yep. It was the number 3 resolution.
Wow.
Number 2 was regenerative farming, which is kind of related to the environment, and is. But I didn't have it in that category. And then the number 1 was voter rights, 113 out of the 120 organizing units.
Okay, so this begs a question, Phil and Megan. Why did they not pass? Why don't they pass at the state level? If they're the most introduced or passed at the local level? And I'll answer the question I just asked, is because not everybody went to become a delegate from this caucus.
Right. That's why, as
So-
I was just going to say, you're given a good push for run for delegate. Please help us out in Duluth.
Yep.
Chris, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Yes, thank you, Megan. And I want to put in a plug for Boundary Waters Day at the Capitol. It's Valentine's Day, February 14th. So you can show your love for the Boundary Waters on February 14th. The rally will be in the morning. 10:30 to 11:30, we'll have Valentines that you can deliver to your legislators after that. And we'll be delivering a great big Valentine to Governor Walz. So you can be part of signing that Valentine and delivering it to the governor. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of energy around Boundary Waters Day at the Capitol. Again, that's Valentine's Day. Carrie, I see your hand raised. There.
Yeah, hi there. I just wanted to comment. I had shared in the chat and accidentally just sent it to your vice chair, who I think could be a moderator. But I wanted to let you know on the first 2 resolutions regarding private well ownership and also groundwater protection. For the past few years, I've been working with related state agencies, the Met Council, and my legislators to include that private infrastructure that's community as well. So again, that's private yet community. So not part of city infrastructure. We have a 26 home HOA over here with private shared community well and septic that's having many issues. And I just don't want it to get left behind. The fact that we're out here too with our private wells, they're shared, and we also have issues that we've been bringing forward. So don't forget about us on those 2 first issues. You know what I mean?
Thank you. No, that's we have those up here too. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
For sure. And to round things out on Prove It First, there's a lot of work just to, again, on February 14th, coming to the Capitol then. And for those of you, if you want to pencil in a date on your calendars for potentially coming to the Capitol as well, February 22nd, that's a Thursday. We are trying right now to get a hearing on Prove It First. And if we are to get it, it will likely be on Thursday, February 22nd from 3 to 5 before the Senate Environment Committee chaired by Senator Fong He. And for those of you that are in Senate District 3, Grand House Childs District, please send him phone calls or emails right now asking him not to block that. And for those of you that are in Senator Kerry Dietzig's district as well in Minneapolis, we need phone calls and emails to her right now as well. So we are trying to prevent the blocking of a hearing on Prove It First. That's obviously part of the resolution, is that we have not gotten a hearing on the bill. So please pencil in February 22nd for a possible day to come down to the Capitol and be part of that Prove It First hearing that will follow Boundary Waters Day at the Capitol on February 14th. So calendar dates.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we've been working on that, Bob Tammon. Please call Grant. I see you there. You're on my list to talk to this week to call Grant too. So yeah, I'm the Senate district. He's our vice chair. And it's just really ironic that the vice chair of our Senate district who's a great person. He really is a great person and he's a good progressive in many, many ways. But you know, 2 of the 3 major projects that are happening in the state right now are in SD3. And he's the one holdout. So we could really use those of us who are in SD3 to give him a call. And so, yes, he is on my list for this week, and I'm chapping away at a few other people to get a hold of him too. And okay, so yes, that's it. Okay, thank you.
Let's get the action alert out about that, okay?
Yes, we will.
Perfect.
It's being drafted as we speak.
I figured, Greg, your goal.
But what really needs to happen is unique emails. Does that make sense? Because Grant will listen to his constituents. He takes our phone calls. He sets aside time, 20 minutes for us here and there and whatever, and really does prioritize and listen to his constituents. But it needs to be a unique email. It's something that's heartfelt from you, or call him and leave him a voicemail, or just try to get him on the phone. He is really a good, kind, understanding person. It's just this issue is going to be his hill to die on, and it's ours as well. So, okay. Well, wonderful. Well, I think, does anyone have any more questions about resolutions, precinct caucuses, Prove It First Day? Wow. Okay. Well, great. That's really good. So then at that point, I think I'm going to stop the recording and just move on to our caucus meeting and see if we can get us out of here by 7:30. Maybe you guys can go still catch the 4th quarter of the game.